Janavallabha Girivarajari Gopi Janavallabha Girivarajari Ashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivarajari Gopi Janavallabha Girivarajari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Just recites the invocation mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, and this is chapter 14, in which Lord Krishna explains the yoga system. We're going to read from text 25, translations and purports. Can we start around the room? Who'd like to start?
Just as gold, when smelted in fire, gives up its impurities and returns to its pure, brilliant state, similarly, the spirit soul absorbed in the fire of Bhakti Yoga is purified of all contamination caused by previous fruitive activities and returns to its original position of serving me in the spiritual world.
When a diseased eye is treated with medicinal ointment, it gradually recovers its power to see. Similarly, as a conscious living entity cleanses himself or herself of material contamination by hearing and chanting the pious narrations of my glories, he regains his ability to see me, the absolute truth, in my subtle spiritual form.
The mind of one meditating upon the objects of sense gratification is certainly entangled in such objects, but if one constantly remembers me, then the mind is absorbed in me.
For one should reject all material processes of elevation, which are like the mental creations of a dream, and should completely absorb one's mind in me. By constantly thinking of me, one becomes purified.
Okay, this section of the chapter has different themes that Krishna is setting up. And in this first one, we've already heard in previous verses the glories of bhakti and how a devotee of Krishna enjoys incredible pure consciousness in loving relationship with Krishna. Now, we're about to get into some of the technicalities of the yoga system, but it's been prefaced here, and it's important to note how it's been set up. In these verses, we've been hearing about the entanglement of consciousness in the material world. Now, consciousness is transcendental. Consciousness is non-temporal. It's not part of time, it's not part of matter, it's completely distinct. But it's completely entangled. So that sounds like a bit of a paradox. How did that entanglement occur? Well, who do we blame? Dumb idiots that we are, right? We're the ones who have entangled ourselves in this material world. Why? Because we have shown our consciousness, not on Krishna, not in order to see and to know and to love Krishna. We've shown it on something else. Shown it on something that we believed would give us the potential to be the enjoyers and controllers independent of Krishna. So we have shown our conscious light on whatever the material world has got to offer. And we're thinking that's been great. And we've been doing it a long time. Not just a few years in this lifetime, many lifetimes. Not just in the human species, but in many species. Not just on this planet, but probably on many planets. And it just goes on and on and on. You know, the amount of entanglement, the amount of absorption we've had in the material world, it's deep. This is what we're carrying with us. This is where we're starting our spiritual life from. Christine and I were discussing this point the other day, that in Ireland there's a famous kind of story that if you ask someone the directions in the rural countryside, you know, and you say, how do you get to Killarney? You know, it's a little town. They say, no. If I was you, I wouldn't start from here. But where else do you start from? It'd be great to start further off down the road, wouldn't it? It'd be great to start Krishna consciousness as almost pure devotees. That would be really fantastic. But, can't start from there, but you've got to start from where you're at. That's the thing. So we're just being reminded where we're at in these verses, that the conditioning of the soul is very, very deep. And Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that it's going to have to be, you're going to have to use this system we mentioned about gold, that you burn gold to get rid of its impurities. You don't just wash it with a bit of soap, right? That's not going to be good enough. Go some gold ore, okay, yeah, we can just rinse the clay off that and it'll be fine. No, you've got to kind of really burnish it in order so that the gold quality comes out. So what they're saying here is we're going to have to go through a very serious process if you want to clear this out. Now, it's already clear that the process of bhakti is capable of doing that in a very happy, nice way. But in case anyone is thinking of any other process mentioned in the Vedic scriptures, we're being warned, you got to take it seriously. And the next two verses, can we read those? We'll hear how serious you got to be.
Therefore, being conscious of the eternal self, one should give up association with women and those intimately associated with women. Sitting fearlessly in a solitary place, one should concentrate the mind on me with great attention.
One more.
Of all kinds of suffering and bondage arising from various attachments, none is greater than the suffering and bondage arising from attachment to women and intimate contact with those attached to women.
So this is a preamble for the mechanical systems of the yoga practice. There is lessons to be learned in these verses, but it's not exactly applicable to the process of bhakti yoga. It's applicable if you're going to try any of the mechanical means, that are being mentioned, that are just like mental creations, like in the dream, these mechanical systems that I'm going to purify myself through my own meditational processes. So Krishna's saying, yeah, okay, it's possible, and there is a method we can introduce you to. But you know how seriously you're going to have to take it. No association, men and women, nothing. It's not something you can do if you're married. It's not something you can do if you're working in a job. It's not something you can do if you're studying at university. It's not something you can do if you like to go off and do other stuff every so often. No. If you want to follow this mechanical system of yoga, you can do it. But take it seriously, because otherwise it isn't going to produce the result you want. So Uddhava now asks, let's carry on.
Shri
Okay.
Sri Uddhava said, "My dear lotus-eyed Krishna, by what process should one who desires liberation meditate upon you? Of what specific nature should his meditation be? And upon which form should he meditate? Kindly explain to me this topic of meditation."
Now, Uddhava isn't asking particularly for himself, although the way Krishna replies, there actually is wonderful lessons for us in Krishna consciousness and in the process of learning how to love Krishna. So he is going to gain something, but at the same time, he's allowing Krishna to describe the more mechanical process. And we'll hear from that now and read through until 46.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Sitting on a level seat that is not too high or too low, keeping the body straight and erect yet comfortable, placing the two hands on one's lap, and focusing the eyes on the tip of one's nose, one should purify the pathways of breathing, by practicing the mechanical exercises of Paraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka. And then one should reverse the procedure, Rechaka, Kumbhaka, Paraka. Having fully controlled the senses, one may thus practice pranayama step by step.
Now this is probably worth mentioning because how many of you have studied Yoga Sutra? Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, yeah? Now that was written and compiled by Patanjali quite a few years, maybe 3,500 years after the Bhagavatam. When you read both the Bhagavatam and the Yoga Sutra, you can see that actually Patanjali is drawing in, probably from a number of sources current at this time, but so much of it, you can directly relate particular verses back to the Bhagavatam, all the different processes. Now, actually, the Yoga Sutra talks about pranayama. Of course it does, but 3 or 4 verses. In the whole Yoga Sutra, there's about 3 or 4 verses on pranayama. And it doesn't even mention Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka. It doesn't mention those. Do you know what these 3 are? What's Puraka? Inhale. What's Kumbhaka? And Rechaka? Exhale. And then what do you do? Which is, then you've just exhaled. So what do you do next? Hold. And then that's the process. We'll have a little go at it. Would you like a little just go at it just for the fun of it? Yeah. This isn't the process that ultimately we're recommending as your way of transcendence, but it's certainly a good way to calm you down if you've got. Now, they generally say with Puraka, with the in-breath, you just let that happen naturally. And then with Kumbhaka, you hold it for 4 times the length of time it took you to inhale. So if that was a second or so, then you hold for 4 seconds. And you exhale more slowly, twice as long as it takes to inhale. And then you hold for the 4 seconds again. So in, hold, exhale, hold. All very peaceful. All right, we move on. But it's the technical details, even the sitting way it's described, that's also described in Yoga Sutra. Actually, even the yamas and niyamas directly from Bhagavatam. It's amazing the crossover on a number of things. So let's hear a bit more. I think we're at text 34 now. Chakra. Again, this is another very interesting verse. The Muladhara is where? The root chakra. And so we don't think about terms of raising the life air within bhakti because, and I'll explain why the focus is that we are centered in the heart, where Krishna is, where the Atma is, and that becomes the focus. But here's interesting, it's talking about the sacred syllable Om, sounding like a bell. And the reason it sounds like a bell is this word anuswara. Anuswara is that little dot that you see above the M's when transliterate some of the Sanskrit words. And it's a kind of, anuswara means that syllable that follows, it's kind of a secondary sound. It's not a full consonant like k, t, b, like that. Those are consonants, full sounds. But anuswara is one that follows. So you're going Om. It's kind of ringing like a bell. And it's mentioned here 15 other, because you can apply a nusvara with the other vowels and produce, different sounds and mantras. So this is all very mechanical stuff. Om is very special. That deserves a whole discussion in itself. But it is contained within the Hare Krishna mantra. The Hare Krishna mantra does more than, in revelation terms to the soul, more than Om on its own might do. Because although Om will introduce us to the nature of absolute truth, it is the Hare Krishna mantra which not only introduces us to the nature of the absolute truth, but invites us to make that relationship with the absolute truth as a supreme person, Krishna. So that just puts it in a different category. Right, text 35. Now that we're fixed in Omkar.
Being fixed in the Omkar, one should carefully practice the pranayama system 10 times at each sunrise, noon, and sunset. Thus, after 1 month, one will have conquered the life air.
Now that doesn't seem a lot of work, does it? Just 1 month, 10 times doing the system, 3 times a day, for a month. Should be okay. But all the preparation that you have to do before you get even near that, your detachment, your kind of complete isolation. No, it's going to be hard work. Now let's hear about the fruits of this meditation.
Keeping the eyes half closed and fixed on the tip of one's nose, being enlivened and alert, one should meditate on the lotus flower situated within the heart. This lotus has 8 petals and is situated on an erect lotus stalk. One should meditate on the sun, moon, and fire, placing them one after the other within the whirl of the lotus flower. Placing my transcendental form within the fire, one should meditate upon it as the auspicious goal of all meditation. That form is perfectly proportioned, gentle and cheerful. It possesses 4 beautiful long arms, a charming beautiful neck, a handsome forehead, a pure smile, and a glowing shark-shaped earrings, suspended from 2 identical ears. That spiritual form is the color of a dark rain cloud and is garbed in golden yellowish silk. Just the chest of that form is the abode of Srivatsa and the goddess of fortune. And that form is also decorated with a conch shell, disc, club, lotus flower, and garland of forest flowers. The two brilliant lotus feet are decorated with ankle bells and bracelets, and that form exhibits the Kaustubha gem along with an effulgent crown. Its upper hips are beautified by a golden belt, and its arms are decorated with valuable bracelets. All the limbs of that beautiful form captures the heart, and the face is beautified by merciful glancing, pulling the senses back from the sense objects. One should be grave and self-controlled and should use the intelligence to strongly fix the mind upon all the limbs of my transcendental body. Thus one should meditate upon the most delicate transcendental form of mind.
So this is a meditation first on different elements, and then on the Paramatma concept that is said to be present within the heart. This is the Lord in the heart. This is Krishna present with us. We say sometimes localized because he's right here with us. And it's a form that the yogis meditate on. At first, they have to rely on descriptions that they've heard from other practitioners and from the Shastras, from the scriptures, and then there will be a revelation. Now we'll come to how all that process works in a few minutes. We're going to read the next couple of verses and then study text 46.
One should then pull the consciousness back from all the limbs of that transcendental body. At that time, one should meditate only on the wonderfully smiling face of the Lord.
Being established in meditation on the Lord's face, one should then withdraw the consciousness and fix it in the sky. Then, giving up such meditation, one should become established in me and give up the process of meditation altogether.
One who has completely fixed his mind on me should see me within his own soul, and should see the individual soul within me. the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he sees the individual souls united with the Supreme Soul, just as one sees the sun's rays completely united with the sun.
Very nice. Now we're going to study text 46. Will we chant the Sanskrit for this? All right. Jnane tamam sativrenam. I can read it better up there than I can do here. Jnane tam sutivrenam. Yunjato yogino manaha. Samyasyat yashu nirvanam. Drava jnana kriya brahma. Jnane netam sutivrena. Yunjato yogino manaha. Samyasyat yashu nirvanam. Dravya jnana kriya brahma.
Jnanenetham sudivrena. Yunjato yogino manaha. Samyasyati yashu nirvanam. Dravya jnana kriya brahma. Jnanenetham sudivrena. Yunjato yogino manaha.
Samyasyat yashu nirvanam. Dravya jnana kriya brahma.
Jnanenetham sutivrena.
Jnanenetham sutivrena.
Yunjato yogino manaha.
Yunjato yogino manaha.
Samyasyat yashu nirvana.
Samyasyat yashu nirvana.
Dravya jnana kriya brahma.
Dravya jnana kriya brahma.
Jnanenetham sutivrena.
Jnanenetham sutivrena.
Yunjato yogino manaha.
Yunjato yogino manaha.
Samyasyat yasu nirvanam.
Samyasyat yashu nirvanam.
Dravya kriya brahma.
Dravya jnana kriya brahma. Do the word for word? Yeah. Jnanena, meditation. Itam, as thus mentioned. Sutivrena, extremely concentrated. Yunjata, of one practicing. Yogina, of the yogi. Manaha, the mind. Samyasyati, will go together. Ashu, quickly. Nirvana, to extinction. Dravya jnana kriya, is the perception of material objects, knowledge, and activities. Brahma, identification. Translation.
When the yogi thus controls his mind by intensely concentrated meditation, his illusory identification with material objects, knowledge, and activities is very quickly extinguished.
Did someone read the purport?
Because of false material identification.
Microphone.
Because of false material identification, we accept our own body and mind, the bodies and minds of others, and supernatural material control to be ultimate realities. Supernatural control refers to the bodies and minds of the demigods, who ultimately are humble servitors of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the mighty sun, which displays immense potencies, obediently treads its universal path by the order of Lord Krishna. It is clearly seen in this chapter that Hatha Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, etc. are part and parcel of Bhakti Yoga and do not actually exist separately. The goal of life is Lord Krishna, and one must eventually come to the stage of pure devotion if one desires to perfect one's meditation or yoga practice. In the mature stage of devotion, as described in this chapter, one becomes free from the artificial duality of meditator and object of meditation, and one spontaneously engages in hearing about and glorifying the supreme absolute truth. Such activities of bhakti yoga are natural because they spring from spontaneous love. When one revives one's original nature as the loving servitor of Lord Krishna, other yoga processes cease to be interesting. Uddhava was a pure devotee, even before the Lord began his instruction. Therefore, it was not expected that Uddhava would give up the supreme platform of being a personal associate of the Lord to take up the mechanical exercises of the yoga system. Bhakti yoga, or devotional service, is so elevated that even in the beginning stages of practice, one is considered liberated, because all of the one's activities are executed under proper guidance for the pleasure of the Lord. In the Hatha Yoga system, one is concerned with bodily control, and in Jnana Yoga, one is concerned with speculative knowledge. In both systems, one endeavors selfishly, desiring to become a great yogi or a philosopher. Such egoistic activity is described in the verse as kriya. One must give up the illusory designations of dravya, jnana, and kriya, and come to the prideless stage of loving service to the Lord. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 11th canto, 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Krishna Explains the Yoga System to Sri Uddhava.
This takes us to the important conclusion of this chapter. But let us go back to that process, because it might seem confusing, even to some of our devotees, how that process is described. And it really brings in 3 steps that Patanjali mentions. Here it's mentioned all as dhyana. Patanjali identifies 3 stages in this, which is dharana, dhyan, and samadhi, right? But then he calls them together, he calls them samyama. And you'll see in this verse, we have samyati, which means bringing together. So this is referring to these processes that ultimately bring the soul closer. Not only are they uniting these processes, but they're bringing the soul closer to Krishna. Now, there is a distinction between dharana, dhyan, and samadhi, and it's kind of revealed in these the descriptions. Dharana generally means, that's a very good translation, holding. Often it just means, people say concentration, isn't it? Dharana. But actually, dharana is the point where the yogi is trying to hold onto the object of meditation. Grasp it, dharana, hold it, carry it, So we're trying to bind ourselves with that object. So it's a very willful kind of action. I want to meditate on something, or whatever it is, even if it's a candle, I've got to try and bind my attention to that candle. So if you like, the flow of effort is coming from me. The flow of energy, if you like, is from me to that object. The next stage is dhyan, meditation, we normally say. But in that situation, the flow is coming to us. Why? Because the qualities of our object of meditation are starting to flow to us, and we're starting just to become recipients, observers, enjoyers of the qualities we're enjoying. So when these descriptions are, you've got to take your meditation through the sun and the moon, and then you kind of finally, now think of the Paramatma, you have to construct that. That's Dharana stage. But once you're in that position of the visualization and the revelation of Paramatma, you are starting to get dhyan, where you are just allowing yourself to receive the qualities of your object of meditation. Quoting it so often. Prabhupada praises Patanjali as the Mahamuni, a great Muni. And some people think that, is he an impersonalist? Is he just really trying to kind of make it all one and things? When you actually read the Yoga Sutras, nah, this guy's a devotee. Ishvara Pranadhan, right? You have to surrender, you have to give your life, give everything, your complete devotion to Krishna. Even the final verse, you become absorbed in the Chitti Shakti, the spiritual energy of the Lord. So anyway, we can, there are parallels, and I think he was giving a good Bhagavatam class in the Yoga Sutras. So after dhyan, there's a verse that says, now the intensity and the quantity of what is being received near Bhasha is so radiant that it just overwhelms you. And in that state, it says, Shunya Swarupa Iva. And this is often a phrase that is misunderstood by many of the yoga teachers. They look at Shunya, nothingness. We become nothing. That's it. No, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. It's Shunya Swarupa Iva. You've got to take all the words in a sutra. Sutras are very short aphorisms, very short statements. Nothing is wasted in a sutra. Every single syllable, every single word is important. And the most important word in that is Iva, which is like. And what it means is that your absorption in this state of samadhi, your absorption in what you're receiving is so intense that you have basically forgotten everything that you ever were interested in this material world. You just, why was I ever entranced by Maya? Why was I ever liking that? What was I up to? I'm just, everything about your material motivations, just go. I mean, that is samadhi, total absorption, because you're receiving so much from the Lord. And that's why it says, Dravya Jnana Kriya Brahma. You recognize in that state that all these things that you were previously interested in, Dravya means substance, it means the material world and everything it's got to offer for your sense gratification. That just seems so ridiculous now. All the things you thought were knowledge and philosophy or religion and everything else, all these concoctions that people come up with in science and, economics and politics, what? No longer there. Kriya. And even all your endeavors, particularly even the subtle ones, the subtle motivation of prestige, not just trying to do big stuff in engineering and, but all the subtle stuff disappears. You're just completely lost to the object of your meditation, to Krishna. Now, bhakti is different. It's the same as that. We do lose interest in the substance of the material world. We do lose interest in the knowledge. We do lose interest in our material aspirations. But we don't, and we are therefore emptied of those. We are Shunya Swarupa, but it's like we're emptied. Why? Because we're now filling up with something else. We're filling up with a new motivation, a new desire, a new set of kind of objectives based on what we have discovered about Krishna. We have become so intimate with Krishna that we're starting to think, not only do I just want to watch you in meditation, I want to serve you. I want to do something for you. I want to interact with you. I want to be with you. I want to play with you. It becomes a completely different type of relationship. And that's why these verses then talk in what does seem a little bit impersonal, that, the seer and the seen no longer are two different things. It's a very important part of initial meditation to understand that I am different to what I see, because that helps me understand I am the conscious being observing the world. I am different. I am the conscious bit. That's not the conscious bit. So that's an important realization. But when we're talking about Krishna, the seer and the seen become united. That doesn't mean we lose our individual identity. No. We are always us. And we've been meditating on Krishna as the supreme, eternal, individual being. We are eternal living beings. But we have become so united in feeling, in emotion, in love, that there is that union. Therefore, I feel Krishna is within me, and I feel I'm within Krishna. But how does that manifest in practical terms? It means that in this life, I see myself, I am here for Krishna's pleasure, because that's what love is. Love is all about thinking about the pleasure of your beloved, because their happiness is what stimulates happiness in you. That's the definition of love. Love isn't just attraction. Love isn't just liking very much, Love is that sense of connection with another being in which whatever emotion they are experiencing becomes your emotion. If they're happy, you're happy. If they are in pain, you feel that pain. Right? That's the state of love. The opposite of love is envy, not hate. Because envy is, if I see you happy, does that make me happy? Makes me very upset. Why the heck? Why are you happy? And I'm not. That's envy. And if I see you in pain, of course, in German there's a very good word for that, Schadenfreude. I am delighted to see you suffering. That's envy. And how much of our own mentality in this world is like that? How often during the day do we find ourselves actually succumbing to that, where we envy someone else's pleasure, happiness? There's a thing that if you're doing stuff on Facebook, never post, I am going on holiday, because that provokes envy. So if you want to talk about your holiday, you do it after. You say, we had a great time, we're coming back now. And everyone goes, yeah, it's okay, he's back in the real world, back to his job. You don't, this is apparently a psychological analysis. So that's a bit of good advice for those on social media. Don't provoke envy, because, we're like that. If we see someone's jetting off, for a nice break, we go, I wish I could do that, So we can see where we're at through that process. But the process of learning to love Krishna is that we have found someone who is so lovable that it becomes easy to want to do something. We don't want to envy Krishna anymore. He's the supreme controller, but we don't want to be the controller in this world. We're very happy to see, can I work with Krishna and do stuff in this world? We're not going to be inactive. There's going to be Kriya, but we call that devotional service. Because now all we're trying to do is simply do something to please Krishna. And we'll do everything we possibly can to please Krishna. And we'll just try and try and try. One devotee was relating to me his memory of Srila Prabhupada at the New York Rath Yatra. And that's how, the New York Rath Yatra was this last weekend, and he was there as the cart was going down Fifth Avenue, where they closed a whole section of Fifth Avenue all the way across for the Rath cart and the devotees doing kirtan. And he was just remembering when he was there with Prabhupada in 1976. And Prabhupada had sort of returned to New York after the difficulties that he'd had in those early days, 1965, 66, establishing the movement. And here he was. We'd now just got a beautiful big center in New York, and devotees had taken over the city center with Lord Jagannath, on the card. And he was just remembering Srila Prabhupada's delight, absolute delight, that he had tried to serve Krishna, and Krishna had reciprocated and helped him build the movement. So you can imagine the feelings of love that exist in that situation between the devotee and Krishna. That development of feeling and emotion is what's on offer in Krishna consciousness. We don't need to go through the isolation. In fact, that won't be helpful. We want to be in the association of devotees who've been glorified in this chapter. And we want to practice the meditation. And we have that image of Krishna in the heart, not just Paramatma in the heart, of Krishna in the heart, in the sound of the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we just have to allow ourselves to become fixed. Dharana, fix your attention on the Mahamantra, attentiveness. First principle, attentiveness. And then just allow that sound to fill you. Fill your ears, fill your mind. And enjoy, you'll start to experience its qualities, not just as syllables, vibrations in the air, but actually as the qualities of Krishna. And at a certain point, when we reach that stage of actually emptying our heart of all the other stuff, you will be in samadhi in your relationship with Krishna. But if you want a taste of what samadhi is, just start the process. That's what it says here. Even from the very beginning, devotees are getting a taste of what it's all about. And it's so nice. The Gita says this is joyful. It's easy to perform because we just want to be happy. And in Krishna consciousness, you can be happy from now forever. Hare Krishna. All right. I think we've got a few minutes for questions.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful class. I just had a comment, more of a thought. When you were talking about, it was interesting how you were talking about what we meditate on. First, our attention goes out, but then the qualities of the thing that we're meditating on comes in. So it just shows like the danger of meditating on like the void or some candle or some spot on the wall. It's like you basically, like if you're going to meditate on the void, and we see people that try to do that, they just become really spaced out, and their personality just becomes so like watered down, and But if you meditate on Krishna, then Krishna has all those wonderful qualities, and devotees become godly, they become saintly, they become fun, they become playful, and it's really like wonderful. You can see that happening, that transformation happening.
Very good point. Yes. Sorry. Then.
I was just noticing towards the end of that last purport, they mentioned prideless performance of devotional service, as if other processes cannot be performed in a prideless way. So I'm just curious if you have a...
Well, I think Prabhupada mentions the word selfish. He says these other mechanical processes tend to be selfish. I'm doing it for myself. I'm going to become freed from the material world. I'm going to reach transcendence, because it's really just another motivation if I want to be happy without Krishna. I want to be happy. I've tried sense gratification. I'm going to try something else. That's self-centered approach. And some devotees talk about, there's self-centered and there's other-centered, altar-centric, which is how we're trying to look at it. I'm not taking up this process. Yes, of course I'm going to benefit. And of course I'm here because I like it. But I'm trying to do the actual process in a way that pleases Krishna. And I think that's how we want to try and approach it. We're not trying to do the bhakti for what we're going to get out of it. We will get something out of it. We have that trust because that's the nature of love. It is fulfilling. But the way you find that fulfillment is by giving yourself.
Thank you so much for the class, Prabhu. You mentioned at one point that certain schools of philosophy or certain traditions in India, they might misunderstand some of these verses in an impersonal manner, thinking that the union means that the actual identities merge as well. What would you say in our tradition are some of the writings that best refute such ideas? I know Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote some things about it. Is there something, I don't know, in Jiva Goswami's writings, in the Tattva Sandarbha? I don't really know all those texts. What would you say? Where do you find the best refutation of Mayavadi philosophy?
Well, I don't think you have to go any further than Prabhupada's books. He does it well in the Gita and throughout the Bhagavatam. I think there's many good arguments. But if we're looking at where Prabhupada himself is drawing some of these arguments, then it's all those sources. Jiva Goswami, I think, we consider to be one of the most important compilers in, if you like, the modern era, from 15th century, 16th century on. And the Bhagavat Sandarbha is the one for you on that one. Tattva Sandarbha is the first, and then the Bhagavat Sandarbha, he's going through the different tattvas, you see, and there's Brahman. And he discusses Brahman within the Bhagavad Tattva. And the reason he says, I'm discussing Brahman within the Bhagavad Tattva because Brahman doesn't have qualities. And it is Bhagavan feature which is the source of Brahman, which has the qualities. So he analyzes, and that I think is probably the most brilliant book for that one. But other acharyas have written very well. Bhaktisiddhanta was obviously very strong on it, and Prabhupada praised him. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity you have removed. So Prabhupada recognized his own guru was very strong and written well on that.
Thank you. I happened to hear a class by Bhakti Maharaj a few weeks ago. He was talking in line of chanting the whole name and the 3 stages of yoga, of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And he was referring to technicality, which was really interesting. He says dharana means focus for 12 seconds. Dhyana means focus 12 times 12, 144 seconds. And samadhi 28 minutes, 44. He says even if you can focus your mind on something for even 12 seconds, it's a very good stage because in the modern world, so many distractions.
Very good. Yeah, the process of those 3, you enter from dharana every time you start meditation. You start from dharana. It's not like you ever go beyond dharana. Every time you sit down for meditation, every time we pick up our bead bag, we're going to enter dharana. I am going to fix my mind on the Maha Mantra. Now I'm going to receive. Yeah, but just count 12 seconds. See how many times your mind has moved on. 12 times. Basically, you have a thought every second. That's the calculation of the neuroscientists. So yeah, your mind will have moved on a dozen times. Brahma.
I just wanted to make an announcement. This Saturday at the Bhaktivedanta Institute in the Duck Pond, Akhandadhi is giving an all-day seminar. Now, it's a 30-part lecture series, each 1 hour, condensed into one day. So it's fast-moving, exciting, and moves interesting. It's called the Atma Paradigm, or Consciousness Explorer's Handbook, and it's discussing how do we know who we are, the nature of the mind, intelligence, body, science, Shastra, philosophy. I've listened to all 30 and then more than once. Not a moment of it was dull. And so you're all invited to the Bhakti Prabhu on Saturday at 10 o'clock. For those who may still be in their pajamas at 10 o'clock, you can listen on Zoom. And that's all invited there. There'll be one serve. You go to our website, just to give you more information. We prefer you register ahead so we can plan the number of meals. We're all invited. Do something honestly you don't want to miss.
Thank you. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Is this the end of it? I actually wanted to say something. My question was that that we have Bhakti Yoga, which we describe as a selfless devotion to God, and we have other forms of yoga. Why do we have those other forms of yoga? Why don't we just do Bhakti Yoga when that is the ultimate way to reach Godhead? So why all those different yoga systems have been put in place?
No, I wouldn't start from there. Now, the point is, you've got to start from where you're at. So these guys who want mechanical, who aren't ready to give their heart, because that's the biggest thing. The most difficult thing in this world is for a selfish being to give their heart, to trust that the personality of Krishna will look after their heart. Isn't it a big thing? You know? I mean, that's where we're at. So for people who aren't ready to give their heart, at least there is a process that keeps them out of mischief and may give them some realization. And in that realization, they might actually become attracted to Krishna. So there's something for everyone in the Vedic processes. That's the point. Wherever you're at, the Vedas can start you from here. Right?